Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about just players to watch in this conference. I think there's so many interesting players. Jordan Dwyer to me is my favorite, but at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting guys this year and a lot of moving parts and so many different teams in this conference. But we got to get into some picks. I'll get some superlatives and then my championship pick and my champion. I'm not going to give out exact records for all these teams. Just feel like that's a little bit of a fool's errand, especially in this conference. So we'll kind of leave that to the wayside, at least for the time being. Maybe I'll give some more concrete picks closer to the season on specific teams. But at the end of the day, let's go ahead and jump into this thing and let's start with Game of the Year. And I'm going to go Texas Tech at Arizona State on October 18th. This one's going to be huge. I think it's one of those games that everyone's looking forward to. It's the team that won the conference last year with the team that has done everything in their power to possibly win the conference this year. Could be kind of a who's going to step into the role of dominating the conference over the next little bit. I don't know if anyone's going to really dominate the conference, but at least sitting atop the conference over the next couple of years. This could be a game that decides that. Plus, a revenge game for Arizona State. One of the games in the conference that Arizona State did not come out on the winning side of was the first game of the conference schedule. So Arizona State really turned a corner after that game. So it'll be really interesting to watch this one develop right early enough in the year where stuff is still developing. It'll be really interesting to watch this game unfold, and I think could very well decide which one of these teams gets to the Big 12 championship and which one of those teams is sitting on the couch. Kansas State at Baylor is my underrated game of the year. I think that's a game that is going to really define this conference in a number of different ways. Avery Johnson versus Sawyer Robertson is a very fun quarterback battle that we're going to have in that one. I think it's one that's going to define these two teams in this year. I think if Kansas State, let's say they beat Iowa State in the first game of the season, they're rolling right through their out-of-conference schedule, they get to this game. If they win this one, they're firmly in place to make the title game. If Baylor finds a way to win this one, even if they've lost to Auburn earlier in the year and maybe some other things have happened since then, I think they're in a great position to possibly be that second team that finds their way in. At the end of the day, obviously, most of it will be decided after this game, but I think this could be one of those games, kind of like Colorado-Baylor a year ago, where if Colorado doesn't hit that Hail Mary at the very end of that game, Baylor wins that game, and Baylor goes to the Big 12 championship in that season. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this one develop. Hopefully it's not quite as heartbreaking for Baylor as it was a year ago with that Colorado game, but I think this one's going to be huge to decide who might be that second team up there in Dallas at the end of the year. Then I got my surprise team of the year. I'm going to go with the Houston Cougars. I think this team is really, really fun. I think Connor Wegman coming in with Willie Fritz is really intriguing to me. Kind of fits the Michael Pratt type design. I think Tanner Koziel is as big of a portal pickup as you're going to find in this entire conference. Really love some of the other portal additions they made. I think Stephon Johnson at wide receiver can take a big time step forward. I think this could be a special team. I don't necessarily think they're going to be like, 9-3, 10-2 competing for this conference. I think they're going to be the team that really messes up a lot of other people, whether that's Texas Tech or that's Arizona State or that's Utah. I don't know exactly who's on that schedule right this second off the top of my head, but at the end of the day, I do think this is a team that has a lot in place, and I really trust Willie Fritz to put something pretty special together over there in Houston this year. Then disappointing team, I'm going to go with Texas Tech. And it's a very weird situation because I'm not talking 5-7 disappointing. I'm not talking they're going to be a terrible team that never finds their stride, that can't do anything offensively, that defense just none of the portal guys work out. What I'm saying is I think the expectations on this team might be a little bit out of reach for this team in particular. Not that they're a bad team by any means. I think they're going to play really good football at times. I think some of the defensive additions are going to be great, like a David Bailey. But when I look at this conference as a whole, I think it's going to be incredibly close. I think the teams that added guys in the portal might be at a little bit of a disadvantage. Not to say that they didn't get more talented, just to say the continuity is a huge part of this conference. I don't think they're going to go 5-7. I could very well see them not getting to 9 wins, and a lot of people looking around wondering, was this a success for Texas Tech in 2025, or was this a little bit of a waste of money? I know that sounds a little bit crazy to say. I think they're going to be a good team. I just think teams or fans around there are expecting a great team. I don't think you're going to get that this year. My freshman of the year is Lincoln Kerr, and there was a couple of different guys that I kicked around for this. There's definitely some guys over at Colorado that can make some big-time impacts, but I think Lincoln Kerr is going to be a beast. And Kansas State has an incredible tight end group. They're going to run a lot of 12 personnel, maybe even some 13 personnel, depending on the situation. Lincoln Kerr can basically be a wide receiver for you. He is so long, so talented, so fluid going through his routes. I think he's going to be an absolute beast for this offense. And I think it's going to be one of those things where at times Avery Johnson's passing has been a little bit all over the place. Doesn't hurt to have a 6'7" guy standing in the middle of the field that can catch just about everything. So I think he's a freak of nature. I think although maybe it'll be a little bit slower of a start when it comes to the opportunities he's going to get this season, I think he's going to finish really, really strong. And although there's some really good freshmen in this group, could have picked Juju Lewis over there at Colorado, as well as some other guys. I'm going to go with Lincoln Kerr to make a big-time impact for the Kansas State Wildcats in 2025. In terms of transfer of the year, it's Devon Dampier. I think this guy's going to be a freak for Utah. When you look at him last year at New Mexico, he made so many incredible plays behind a really bad offensive line. With all due respect to the New Mexico offensive line from a year ago, he's going to have two of the best tackles in the entire country with Spencer Fano and Caleb Lumu. They're going to have really, really good talent across that offensive line. And he's going to have guys around him. Not necessarily absolute freaks of nature, but Tobias Merriweather can play some really good football. We talked about Ryan Davis earlier. Absolutely can be a guy that can make some plays. Wayshawn Parker coming in from Washington State to be the backup running back. Really good hands out of the backfield and can be a very dangerous player, make some big-time plays for you. I think this guy's going to be a household name by the end of the year. I think if you didn't know the name, you should have, if I'm being totally honest, but totally understand not being locked into Lobos football all the time. So he's a very talented guy. He has a huge opportunity, a much better offensive line, better weapons. I think he's going to be a star at the end of this year and do some really special things for Utah. The Offensive Player of the Year, as far as I'm concerned, is Jordan Tyson. I don't find a better player in this entire conference than Jordan Tyson. I think when you look at wide receivers across the country, I'd have him number 2 behind Jeremiah Smith. I think he is that good. I think he is better than Orion Williams. I think he's better than a lot of these guys that we put on a little bit of a pedestal. This guy's a freak. And if he was healthy in that Texas game, who's to say they wouldn't have won that game, moved on to play Ohio State? I don't think they would have beaten Ohio State, but you never really know. It's a very, very talented player that they lost halfway through the season. If he is healthy, he's going to put up crazy numbers. He's going to be the number one option on this team. He's going to be the top wide receiver in this conference. I think he's going to be the best offensive player in this conference. Now, obviously, his quarterback could kind of steal that from him with him getting the stats that Jordan Tyson gets, but I think Jordan Tyson's going to be so jump off the page incredible that he's going to get this award at the very end of the year. Love this player, and I think he's someone that I think NFL teams are going to be falling over each other to get in the first round next year. For defensive side of the ball, I'm going Logan Fano. This is a guy that hasn't quite hit the crazy numbers that a lot of people expected from him, but he's still relatively young. Is still a guy that can make so many different plays and absolutely get off the edge very, very aggressively. I believe had 3.5 sacks a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. Can make much more than that this year. Is absolutely a guy that can get after the quarterback. I think when you talk about Utah as a whole, that back end is going to be so tough to deal with that they're going to be able to pin their ears back and go after quarterbacks a lot. And I think Logan Fano is going to be at the very center of that. Teo Johnson, his teammate, might just steal it from him, if I'm being totally honest. Thought about putting him here as well, but I think Logan Fano is an absolute beast. I think his brother might be a little bit more of a beast at the left tackle position for them, but at the end of the day, I think Logan holds his own very, very well and is going to be a freak of nature coming off the edge for Utah this year. For my coach of the year, I'm going Kyle Whittingham. I think he puts it all together. I think this team is a very, very talented team. We'll get to it here in a second. I think they're a team that can put a lot of really, really good things together. I also think last year, you think back on last year and you think they went 5-7, everything went wrong for them. If Cam Rising was on the field, I think that's an 8-4, 9-3 team. That's probably in the mix for the Big 12 title. And that sounds crazy how big of a jump that would be. But the reality is, I think a lot of people are looking at them saying, they just got to find their way back up. And they're obviously, towards the top of the conference in a lot of preseason polls and everything. But if this guy goes 10-2, or if he goes 11-1, or even 12-0, he has the ability to do that. If he does, he's absolutely going to be the pick here. And frankly, I don't think it hurts too much that it might just be his last year in college football. Obviously, that shouldn't have too much bearing on the award, but let's be totally honest. The people voting on this have a little bit of a heart, and they're going to understand that this would be a very cool moment for him. I think he's going to more than earn it. I don't want to say that he's not going to earn it by any means, but I think he's going to be the guy that ends up winning this Coach of the Year, and I think he rides off into the sunset, at least getting to the conference championship matchup. Arizona State against Utah is my pick for the conference championship matchup in 2025. I think they have game changers at quarterback. I think they have really solid veteran defenses, great weapons. I think both of them have run games that, although they're transfers coming in, will be plenty talented. I really like some of the wide receivers. Obviously, Jordan Tyson chief among them. And elite head coaches on two very different sides of the spectrum when it talks about the time they spent in college football. Obviously, Kenny Dillingham is going to be one of the younger coaches, one of the more special coaches in this sport right now. Kyle Whittingham obviously is going to be a huge part of this sport even when he's far gone. You know, he's going to be one of those guys that maybe not everyone talks about quite as much as they should, but is a really special head coach that has put together a really special career. I think he finishes it off with a Big 12 title. I think the Utah Utes are going to win the Big 12 title this upcoming year. I think Devon Dampier is that good, and I think people are going to figure out that obviously New Mexico up to Utah is quite the jump. It's not going to matter for this kid. I think he's an absolute freak of nature. I think Wayshawn Parker is one of the more underrated running backs in the entire country. I think this team has all the ability in the world to make some special stuff happen. The defense is absolutely veteran as can be and really, really talented. And then I think they have the best coach in the conference. I still think that Kyle Whittingham is the very best coach in the Big 12 in a sea of incredible coaches. I think he is the best coach of the bunch. So I'm going to go with Utah to win this conference, a conference that, frankly, pick any of the 16 teams. Obviously, some of them I'll be a little bit more questionable about than others, but I would have been very questionable about Arizona State going into last year. So no one knows. This conference is going to be all over the place. The Big 12 is America's conference for a reason. It feels like college football every single week. Every team can beat every other team in that conference on any given Saturday. It is the perfect conference in my eyes. It is absolutely perfect in every way. We have a quote-unquote villain in Texas Tech that's trying to buy their way to the top. We have some great, Cinderella stories that could possibly happen in a Baylor or a BYU after losing their quarterback could make a run. You never really know what's going to happen in this conference. That's why I love it so much. It's my favorite conference in the entire country. Always love picking this one, although it's kind of just throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded. But it'll be really fun to watch this one unfold. We'll obviously jump into more details as we get a little bit closer to this season kicking off for them, but that'll wrap it up. That'll do it for this edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. Please do like, subscribe, do all that stuff on as many platforms as you can. If you're watching on YouTube right now, go on over to Spotify and give that one a follow. If you're listening on Spotify, do the same thing on YouTube. It would mean the world to me. Absolutely does help all the stuff that I'm doing, and we're going to be back tomorrow, and we're going to get into the Big Ten. We're going to stick with the big conferences, quote-unquote. We'll go to the Big Ten tomorrow. We'll get into a weird conference. One of those conferences that I feel like has pretty defined tiers. Within those tiers, I have no earthly idea what's going to happen. So we'll break all that down tomorrow. It's going to be a really fun time, and I'll see you then. Thank you so much for tuning in.